Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Comfort Zone. Um, it's been a while since I have recorded anything on here because I've been busy trying to build my other podcast, That Behavior Change Show. If you're not subscribed to that one, you really want to subscribe to it because we talk about, how to build health promoting behaviors to help you with your health goals, right? All the psychology, right? The psychological journey of health, whether it's weight loss or weight gain or whatever else it may be, that is not often spoken about. And that was the intention of creating a podcast around that. So if you're not subscribed to that one, you really want to, because there's some amazing nuggets, golden nuggets on there. Okay, so this topic is a tough one. It's a tough one because number one, it's something that is not often spoken about, right? But in this day and age, we do see conversations around this, but you don't see conversations around this from Muslims. Like miscarriage is something that is still not often spoken about by the Muslim community. If you go on YouTube and you type in miscarriage, a lot of the videos that come up, very informative, right? Really helpful, but they're not from Muslims. So I thought it'd be helpful to hear a different perspective of this experience, of my experience of having a miscarriage and how I handled it, right? So just a disclaimer, this video is going to be raw. This video is going to talk about the process of miscarriage. So if you're someone who's going through a loss right now and you're not ready to hear it, you haven't healed, please don't watch it. If you're someone who's pregnant and you're really anxious about miscarriages, please don't watch it, right? I don't want to cause you any more anxiety. Only watch this video if you feel that you're physically and emotionally ready to watch it, because a lot of you who are going to come here and watch it are probably people who've gone through this as well. Okay, so disclaimer, we're going to talk about some gory stuff that happened. I want to talk about the realities because, again, a lot of the information on there is sugar coated and stuff like that. And I'm going to do my best to not sugarcoat it and to tell it as it was. It's not going to be easy, but it's what I'll try and do. Okay, so this happened. So this happened in 2017. Okay, so I'm just going to go back a little bit to give you a whole background of my journey into motherhood, especially if you're someone who's new to me and new to my channel. So I have, alhamdulillah, I had my first baby in 2008. She was, beautiful, unplanned, right? Alhamdulillah, Allah gives it to you when you need it the most, alhamdulillah. So 2008 was a beautiful journey, really easy pregnancy, but I did struggle with postpartum depression. Again, it was a new life. I had just gotten married. I just started work. So a lot of things were happening. So I felt like I needed that time between my first and the second baby. Baby number 2 came along in 2014. Baby number 3 came along shortly after in 2015. Okay, so baby number 3, his pregnancy was a different one. Usually my pregnancies are very chill, very straightforward, alhamdulillah. But when I was around 14 weeks pregnant with baby number 3, I had this massive bleed. Like I thought, khalas, I had lost the baby. I went to the hospital, but she was happy in there, kicking and all of that stuff. And they diagnosed a low-lying placenta. So a low-lying placenta is when your placenta attaches too close to the cervix, right? So this is your uterus, right? your cervical opening is essentially where the baby is coming from. So if the placenta attaches too close to the cervix, right? And when you're giving birth, your cervix dilates, right? That can be really dangerous. So ideally, you don't want a placenta that places itself too close to the cervix. So I was diagnosed with low-lying placenta at around 14 weeks. But the positive thing is that I think around 90% of low-lying placentas, right, kind of correct themselves as the uterus grows. Because when the uterus gets bigger, the placenta kind of moves with it. So it moves away from the cervix. So I had hope that that was going to correct itself. So 14 weeks diagnosed with low-lying placenta, a 20-week scan, my placenta was still low lying. 28-week scan, my placenta was still low lying. And then my doctor was like, okay, we need to, it looks like your placenta likes to be where it is because, again, I have a tilted uterus, so my bellies don't tend to grow too big when I'm pregnant. So I don't know if whether that decreases the chances of placenta moving or not, but it could be. Um, So my doctor's like, okay, we need to prepare you. You may have to end up with a C-section with this baby if the placenta does not move. We do need it to move because if it doesn't move, you have a high risk of bleeding out when you're giving birth and all of that stuff. So I was like, okay, so the last scan, that would be the decider of whether I'm gonna deliver baby number 3 vaginally or not, would be the position of my placenta. So we had the scan. And lo and behold, it wasn't a low-lying placenta anymore. It was a full previa. So now my placenta had almost fully covered the cervix. So there is no way that we're getting the baby out that way. So with that diagnosis, I was so scared. I've always been so scared of C-sections because it sounds hard to me because my deliveries have been pretty easy, alhamdulillah. So C-section was like, oh my goodness. Um, so I found out I was going to have a C-section. I was 36 weeks. The C-section was scheduled at 38 weeks because they really don't want you to go into labor. They don't want you to go into labor when you have a previa because that is really, really dangerous for both mom and baby. So my C-section was scheduled at 32 weeks. And I remember this because while um, I was just making sure I was recording this because sometimes I can speak and not record anything. So my beautiful sister was there with me. She's a doctor. So I was prepped for surgery. I go in, I was awake during the surgery. My sister was there. My doctor was there again, who's amazing. Dr. Simbakalia, thank you. Right. So as baby, and I'm going to rewind back a little bit. Okay. When I found out that I was going to have a C-section, I literally spent hours reading everything I could about C-sections, from the stitching to the experience to the recovery to how I can have a vaginal delivery after a C-section if I was going to have another baby. Right. So I really equipped myself with all the knowledge that I could to prepare myself because knowledge is what helps me get through situations. Knowledge is what gives me the confidence to handle any situation that is thrown at me. And I guess it's one of the reasons why I'm sharing this with you, because when you're equipped with information, it may be easier for you to navigate that situation, right? So I learned everything I could about C-sections. So I went into that delivery room knowing to the type of stitching that was going to be performed, right? That's how much I kind of absorbed. So alhamdulillah, C-section was quick. The baby came out beautiful. She had lungs on her, like she had lungs on her. Beautiful baby girl, alhamdulillah. Now the doctor was stitching me up, and I was like, "Yeah, can you just make sure it's this kind of stitching because we are planning for a VBAC, which is the vaginal birth after C-section." And My doctor goes, okay, sure. Can we just finish this first before you think about another baby? Right? Let me just finish stitching you up first, right? Um, so we all laughed about it and all that stuff. Alhamdulillah, the recovery was a whole other different story. But I'm grateful I got through it again. Allah gives us this test to make us stronger. He doesn't give us this test to break us. He gives us this test to elevate us, to make us stronger, right? And as long as we can view them in that way, yeah, they're gonna be hard. We're gonna cry. We're gonna be heartbroken. But ultimately, just understanding that He is the best of a planner can really bring peace when it comes to us dealing with these situations. So baby number three, born with C-section, alhamdulillah, it went beautifully. Recovery was interesting. Like I said, that's a whole other conversation. If you want me to do a video around that, I can do it. Just let me know. And then when she was about 18, 19 months, no, well, no, when she was just over a year, actually. When she's just over a year, we're like, okay, we're ready for baby number four, but this time a VBAC. So I told my doctor, okay, we're ready for baby number four because I wanted my babies because of such a huge gap between my first two. I wanted the rest of them to have a smaller gap. And again, subhanAllah, is how things play out. The fact that it was a big gap between the first two, my eldest is like so helpful with her younger siblings, right? So I can trust her with them and all that stuff. It's amazing how things play out. Um, so yeah, so we're ready for baby number four, alhamdulillah. So we tried and we conceived first time around, like boom. It's like, okay. So told my doctor, okay, we have conceived. By the time the baby's born, it would have been 2 years, right? Just over 2 years between the birth of baby number four and the C-section of baby number three, which means it would be safe for me to have a trial of labor because again the concern is the ruptures of the incisions, right? So if you have a pregnancy that is too close to your C-section, there's a higher risk of uterine rupture, even though it's like 1%, but there's a risk there. But now that I would be, the gap would be over 2 years, it was safe for me to try a vaginal birth after C-section. So my doctor was happy with that. So started, yep, pregnant again, alhamdulillah. Kept it from everybody for until around I was about 8 weeks. Told my mom once we saw a beautiful heartbeat, made this nice cake, right? Baby was gonna be due in February. I remember that from the cake. Again, really easy pregnancy from the get-go. I don't really I get nausea, but I don't really get any severe like morning sickness or anything like that. Um, and then when I was around, so again, we saw heartbeat at around 8 weeks, beautiful heartbeat, strong heartbeat. I think it was around 160. So it was lovely, alhamdulillah. When I was around 10 weeks, I woke up one morning. And again, this is where the details are going to start, okay? Because again, there is no haya. There's no shyness when it comes to knowledge. And this is part of knowledge. This is part of understanding the experiences that 1 in 4 pregnancies, right, are going to have. 1 in 4 pregnancies are going to end up in a miscarriage, unfortunately. Okay. So I woke up one morning when I was about 10 weeks and I saw some brown spotting. It's like, okay, brown spotting is normal in pregnancy. I remember having brown spotting with my second and it wasn't a big deal. But I was like, you know what? Let's just have a scan. We only had a scan a couple of weeks ago. Baby was absolutely fine. Let's just have another scan to make sure all is well. I think I was around 10 weeks and 2 days or something like that, right? Just over 10 weeks. It's like, okay, so got to the hospital on the same day, did an ultrasound. And so I'm used to ultrasounds, right? I'm the person who loves ultrasounds because I love seeing the baby and stuff like that. So I went on there like thinking nothing of it, right? Thinking nothing of it. Like I said, all my other pregnancies were very chill, very easygoing and all of that stuff. Exercise through them and all that, right? So I was in the scan room. My husband was there with me, and I could see the sonographer. So they did a vaginal one because again, under 12 weeks, they tend to do a vaginal one, a transvaginal ultrasound because it's easier to see and it's more accurate. And then she was looking around, and she was quiet. And I was looking at my husband. I couldn't see the screen, right? And she goes, how far along are you? I was like, 10 weeks. I think, like I said, 10 weeks, 2 or 3 days. And she goes, the baby is measuring 9 weeks and 4 days. I was like, okay. And I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. When she said there's no heartbeat, I froze. I went numb because I did not know what that meant. Again, when you haven't been through a loss, you're so oblivious to all the possible things that can go wrong in pregnancy. You become so oblivious to it, like you have no clue. Like everybody's popping babies. Surely it's an easy thing to do, right? So when you haven't gone through a miscarriage or a loss like that, you never think it's going to happen to you. And you become so oblivious to it. So when she said there's no heartbeat, I just went numb. Like, what do you mean there's no heartbeat? She goes, and then she showed me the screen, and it did not look like the scan that I saw a couple of weeks ago. Baby wasn't kicking anymore. There was nothing. It was just there floating, you know? And I just couldn't help myself. When you're crying, I started to cry, but it wasn't a cry. It was a cry from your soul. Those kind of tears, like from the depth of your soul. So I just I just bawled. I just cried from the bottom of my soul. Um, and she goes, "You can have another opinion," because the sonographer wasn't my usual one, because my usual, mashallah, she's always packed. So she wasn't the ones I usually go to. Uh, so I was like, yeah, okay, I need to have a second opinion because this can't be right. So as soon as I got out of there, I went to my normal, I called in. They're like, okay, we are going to bring you in now as an emergency, coming straight away. So they took me in straight away. The whole journey there, I was just in tears because I felt like I needed someone to pinch me to wake me up from a bad dream. That's how it felt. It didn't feel real. It felt like a bad dream that I needed to wake up from, right? Because everything I knew about being pregnant and pregnancy and having a healthy pregnancy and a successful pregnancy was just shattered. It felt like it was just shattered, right? But again, the reality of this situation really came to light of, oh my God, this can really happen to anybody, anyone, right? So the first thing that I want to say, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, is one of the first things I felt was guilt. Like, what did I do? Is it the exercise that I was doing? Being a health and fitness professional, even back then, I knew it wasn't the exercise. But as humans, we always want to look for, okay, what did I do to cause this? This is my body. I must have done something to cause this. So if you're going through this, I want to tell you this: it is not your fault. There is nothing that you did, nothing that you ate, nothing that you did cause this. The processes that happen, especially when, in the first trimester, this is why the risk of miscarriage is so much higher in the first trimester, is because there's so many things that need to happen for the embryo to grow, from implantation to like all the stages the millions of processes need to take place, and all of them need to happen perfectly for the pregnancy to proceed to be healthy. And one thing out of place, khalas, is done. Right? So it's nothing that you did that caused this. It just happens. Okay. So I went to the hospital, had the second ultrasound, and she said, "I'm sorry, Yusra, there's no heartbeat." And I just, Yeah. I was moving between crying and freezing, crying and freezing, crying and feeling numb. Like those are just the emotions that I was in. Uh, and then she said, "I'll book you in with your doctor, and then you can decide on how to proceed from there." Because now I was 10 plus weeks. Obviously, the baby had passed a whole week, and I didn't know, right? And one of the things that is a concern is if the pregnancy didn't progress, there's a higher risk of miscarriage, leaving the tissue in your body, right? So I'll talk about what options there are there. But on that day, I just went home, went to my mom's, and just cried. I hadn't told a lot of people at that time, just my sister-in-laws knew, my sister and my mom, and that's it. I just, again, it was such a shock. It was such a shock. So the next day I went back to my OB, and again, like she was so compassionate, so compassionate. I don't know how to thank her, right? She said, okay, so we have three options. Number one, the first option um, is expectant management. So expectant management is when you allow the process to happen naturally. You don't do anything. You allow your body, because at this point, my body hadn't really realized yet. Yes, I had the brown spotting, but nothing had picked up yet. Right? It didn't know anything. There wasn't any heavy bleeding or anything. So my body didn't really know anything yet. So this is called a missed miscarriage, where you know you've miscarried, not through heavy bleeding, but through an ultrasound, right? So, because the baby had passed almost a week, right? I didn't know about it, and I only knew from an ultrasound. So, it's called a missed miscarriage. So, you can either, so expectant management is when you allow the tissue to pass on its own. The second one is medical management. This is when they can give you a pill, right, to speed up the process, to bring about labor and all of that so that things clear. And the third one is a DNC. Now, I knew I didn't want a DNC because, look, I felt I felt like I needed to see my baby. I needed to see baby. For my own peace, I needed to see my baby. So I didn't want an DNC. So my two options were expectant management or the medical management. And the medical management, that pill when they give you, they're inducing it, it hurts like crazy. So I was going to do everything to avoid that if I could avoid it, right? I mean, after all, I did have three small kids that I needed to look after. So she goes, I was like, okay, I want to feel this. I know it's crazy, but I wanted to go through the process. I wanted to feel every bit of it, as painful as it may be, because I felt that that would give me closure and it would give me peace. So I wanted to go through that process. So I told her, look, give me time. I want to see what my body is going to do. Okay. If in a week or so nothing's happened, then I'll take the pill. She goes, okay, we can do that. Absolutely. So Alhamdulillah, so she gave me time. 4 or 5 days had passed. All right, 4 or 5 days had passed and nothing was happening. I was literally walking around looking pregnant, feeling pregnant, bloated, like all the signs, or like I was pregnant, but I knew my baby wasn't alive anymore. That was so hard. That was so incredibly hard. Just walking around um with a baby that was gone, right? But again, I wanted to see my baby. Then I remember June the 7th, around 5 p.m. Now, I've had babies before. I know what contractions feel like. So, June 7th, 2017, I started to get mild contractions. They felt like Braxton Hicks. If you've been pregnant, you know how Braxton Hicks feel like, right? But a bit stronger than that. Like, told my husband, okay, I feel like something's going to happen today. This feels more than cramps. They feel a bit strong. So he was okay. So I just kept moving. I just kept walking around the house and I was like, okay, today's the day. I was talking to my body, telling it it's okay to let go, just breathing through it, making dua, praying. And the one dua, subhanAllah, the one dua that I made when I found out that baby had no heartbeat is please, Allah, let me see my baby. Because everything I read online around about miscarriage at 11 plus week, they said, oh, the baby would be too small, you may not see it, it may just end up falling in the toilet and all of that stuff. And that was heartbreaking for me because I wanted to say goodbye, right? So the one dua that I made is, Ya Allah, please let me see my baby, let me just see my baby. And I kept making that dua over and over and over again. So it was so again, June the 7th, contractions picked up, picked up, picked up. Now it was around 11 p.m. Now labor had, and when I say labor had kicked in, like labor had kicked in. I could feel my cervix opening. If someone was, I feel like someone was stabbing my cervix. If you've been through labor, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And I was just breathing through it, breathing. I was grateful. I was grateful that it was happening naturally, right? But also praying that I would meet my baby. But at the same time, it was painful. I'm also grateful that it happened at night. Kids were already asleep. So it was just me and my husband in the bedroom. We have a bathroom in our bedroom. And so I was just in and out. I was moving between bedroom, bathroom, bedroom, bathroom. And then contraction really picked up. I told him, okay, whatever happens, I don't want baby to fall in the toilet. So we grabbed a sieve, a massive sieve that I had bought especially for this because I wanted to catch whatever was coming out. I wanted to catch it and see what it was. I know, like I said, this is going to be raw. So if you're not ready to listen to this, please skip it. Okay. So I wanted to catch whatever it was. So I put a sieve and subhanallah, I was sitting in the toilet seat. I remember my husband was in the bedroom because I didn't want him in there. He was in the bedroom. And I had one big contraction. I had the sieve there, one big contraction, and something dropped. Mind you, up to now, I had no bleeding whatsoever. It was just the contractions. No, even the spotting had stopped at this stage. I had one big contraction and I felt something come out. And I looked down in the sieve and it was my baby. There was not a single drop of blood on it. It was perfect. It was, if you ever seen like a mini teddy bear, it's about that size, right? It had eyes, like it was just black dots. You could see through the skin because it was transparent. You could see the lungs, the heart. It was a mini teddy bear, right? It was the most beautiful thing I ever saw, subhanAllah. And you can think at just 11 plus weeks, a few weeks before it was nothing. And it's like a little human, right? I cried joys of tears, joys of pain, joys of my dua being answered because the chances of baby coming out first with no placenta, with no bleeding, with nothing, just for me to see it, subhanallah. Like the moment I saw baby, like I just felt this wave of peace. Like I was sure, I called my husband in and I was smiling. And I'm sure he must have been wondering, why are you smiling? You just lost a bit. But I was smiling because my dua was answered, right? And then took baby. I had this little cute box that I had prepared because I already planned to, if I was going to see baby, we're going to bury him in my mom's garden. So I had this little box that I had prepared. I still have the the pregnancy tests and all of these things that I've kept for myself, just for memories. So put baby in the little box, my husband took to the bedroom. And then I continued to sit in the toilet because now everything started to come out. I sat there for over 2 hours. It is amazing. It just 11 weeks and a few days. How much was already in there? It was chunks and chunks of tissue just coming out. It felt like my insides were coming out and the contractions were just ramping up, ramping up, ramping up. So this was around, so 12:05, baby came out June 8th. And then from 12:05 up to around 2 in the morning, I was just in the toilet. I was losing so much blood. to a point where I almost fainted. My husband he had to carry me to the bed, called my sister. And again, my sister, amazing advantage of having a doctor in the family. Poor thing, she drove at that time of the night to come to mine. And she had brought injections with me, so with her. So she gave me because again, I'm allergic to painkillers. There's no painkillers that I can take other than a Panadol. Imagine recovering from a C-section with no painkiller. That was not fun. But anyway, so she gave me an injection to stop the bleeding and all that stuff. So 2 hours of just taking everything out, then went in bed, continued to bleed. After the injection, it did slow down. I managed to fall asleep a little bit. And then the next morning, my husband, I was still so weak. So I just stayed in bed. My husband took baby and buried it in my mom's garden. Um, so I did get my V back after all, but it was not the V back I expected, right? But subhanallah, the peace that came with seeing my baby was immense. But also, even if I hadn't seen my baby, right? Just as Muslims, that is such a blessing to have this deen, because even when we go through these hard times, even when it feels like we're losing, even when it feels like we don't understand why me? What did I do, right? We know that Allah is the best of planners. We know this, and just believing that and having that yaqeen and certainty and trust in Allah's plan can bring so much peace, because I could sit here and just continue to live there asking, why me? Why did this happen to me? Why not you? Why not you? This dunya is a test. Allah is going to test us in all the ways. He's going to test us through our children, through our health, through our finances. We know this, right? Through our wealth, we know this. And when we can put those glasses on, see things from that lens and going, this really hurts. It really, really hurts. Right? And you can cry and you can be sad and do that, because that is mercy, right? But also having a deeper understanding that there's a reason for this, but it's okay that I don't know the reason. There's a reason for this, but I trust in Allah's plan and Allah's wisdom, right? It can just bring so much peace to it. Alhamdulillah. So that was my experience of my missed miscarriage at 11 plus weeks. It was heartbreaking. I will never forget it. I'll never forget my baby. Inshallah, may we all be united with our babies in Jannah, inshallah. I did also want to talk about pregnancy after a loss, because alhamdulillah, I did conceive baby Sufyan only 4 weeks after that miscarriage. So I didn't even have my first cycle, and we conceived Sufyan. And you'll never understand the experience of being pregnant after a loss, the anxiety that can come with that. And I wanted to talk about that, but I'm not going to talk about in this episode because it's going to make this episode far too long. So I'm going to record another episode to talk about now my experience of pregnancy after a miscarriage. I hope this episode had shared some lights that you may have not seen before, some encouragement that, yeah, this sucks, but you're not alone. You're not alone. So many of us suffer in silence. And if you've been through this or you're going through this, please talk to someone. Having a support system is so important. It's one of the things that we don't talk about because there's so much guilt What are people going to say? What are people going to think? What people are going to say it's my fault, right? And all of these things. There's so much guilt associated with it, but just know that it is not your fault. You did not cause this. You did not do anything to cause it. It just happens. 1 in 4 pregnancies are going to end up in a loss. Majority of time is because of the chromosome issue at the beginning of the pregnancy. And that is just our way for our body to protect us, to say, okay, if this baby grows, something is going to be wrong. So we may as well just stop now to save you from a future heartache. And I know that is not something that we want to hear when we're losing our baby. I know this, but we don't want to hear it at that time. But when you look back and think about it from logically, it can really help put things into perspective. And you can get pregnant again with a healthy baby. In fact, some studies have shown that getting pregnant after a miscarriage, right, you tend to be a little bit more fertile, and studies have even shown that the chances of a higher pregnancy, of a healthier pregnancy straight after a loss within the first 3 months, right, is higher, right? So, but only when you're physically and emotionally ready. Don't rush into it until you're physically and emotionally ready to be pregnant again. But yeah, take your time, have a strong support system, talk about it. Like talking about it can really, really, really help. Um, if you have any thoughts, comments about this, I would appreciate it. And inshallah, I will catch you guys in the next episode, which think I'm going to record right now because I'm here, so I may as well just do it. Who knows? Because I have no idea what other time I'm gonna get. It's been such a busy few weeks. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.